I'm joined here by a world-class cellist, Michael Kevin Jones. Michael, welcome to Kaslo.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to be here.
So, what brings you to this part of British Columbia?
Well, I'm playing concerts, and last night I played a concert here for the Kaslo Chamber Music Society in the church, and that's the reason, basically, why I'm here.
Okay, Michael, many of our listeners, when they think of traveling or touring musicians, especially ones with an obviously British accent like yours, their thoughts immediately go to, the Rolling Stones or something. So I assume you have a tour bus, groupies, the whole nine yards, correct?
Well, the Rolling Stones, I'm a Rolling Stone, I suppose, because I travel on my own, at least at the moment. And my groupie bus, or the equivalent, would be the Greyhound, Canadian Greyhound system, which is fabulous. And I find it, pretty groovy.
Far out, Michael. Far out. Okay, so I'm curious. How does one launch a career as a professional cellist? What's your backstory, as it were?
Well, I think any career in any profession is a process, and it's a question of persistence, development, and basically continuation. So any profession, especially in one like music, where you have to travel a lot, means you're open to many, many different markets, and you don't have the barrier of language. So you can play in Japan, or you can play in Iceland, or in Canada. It really doesn't matter. What matters is the musical language.
Let me take you back to your youth. How was it that you came to embrace the cello as an instrument?
Well, I started playing the piano, as most kids probably do, and then I wanted a second instrument, and I started the violin and the viola, and as you can see, I'm now 6'2". So I felt kind of uncomfortable with such a small stringed instrument, but I loved the sound and the feel of the bow and the stringed instrument. So I went on to the cello. I heard a cello in my school. I was lucky enough to go to school where you could have access to this kind of instrument. And I started the cello and never looked back from then, really.
Okay, I noticed that in looking over some of your biographical information that among many other quite extraordinary highlights, you had an opportunity to do some very special recording using what I would assume is a very special instrument for, was it the Museum of Modern Art or one of the large New York museums, I believe, and something about a Stradivarius. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, well, this was a recording for the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which is obviously a huge institution in New York, which has a very interesting musical instrument department. Apart from having Vermeer and other incredible works of art, they also have a whole section dedicated to musical instruments. And I was lucky enough to record with them, for them, a record of cello guitar music using one of their ancient instruments. And later, a few years after that, I was able to go back to record the complete Bach suites using a Stradivarius cello from 1667. And that recording has been, well, obviously with me since, and has been kind of the passport to open a lot of doors for playing, because, everybody knows the Metropolitan Museum of Art, everyone knows the work of J.S. Bach. So even if they didn't know me, I was able to send that record to whatever music society or concert society throughout the world, and they would at least look at it, maybe open it, maybe listen to it, maybe hire me. And so things, like you were saying earlier, building a kind of profession, that was one of the keys, I would say, to me being able to construct a network of customers, or of places to play, of audiences. So that recording for me has been vital, has been very important.
Okay, so I'm curious about the impact that new and emerging technologies have made on your career as a musician, and not just as a musician per se, but a musician who's focused on playing old music or ancient music. has the internet made a positive difference for you in your career, and if so, how or why, or has it been a curse?
Well, all I can say is I depend on the internet, and I've had the internet since I've been first started playing professionally, so it's something I grew up with. I couldn't imagine my world without it, because my whole tour is constructed around the internet. I call people on the internet. I have my laptop, which I use as my whole organizer. I use it as a telephone. I use it as a way to communicate, write letters, send promotion. In every single aspect, I use the internet, basically. So I would say it's a very positive thing.
And I would assume that it's possible for folks who are interested in your music, who might like to purchase an album or a particular tune, to go to a website and do so. And if that's the case, here you go. Let a breathless universe know where to find your music.
Well, that would depend. I mean, if you wanted to buy a CD on which I'm playing, you could find it on Amazon. You could find it on many websites, because these things are now distributed, and streaming is big, iTunes and all these things. But if you wanted to buy a CD where I personally had some benefit, then it would be good for people to contact me directly, because I have a deal with the record company where I would pay, €5, let's say, for an album, and I would buy that wholesale rate, and then it's up to me to decide how much I sell it. So, for example, in my concerts, when I'm on tour, I would sell perhaps for $15. So I have a margin, not a big margin, because I'm lugging the CDs around in my case, but I have some benefit which goes directly to me. So basically, for me, it would be better if people contacted me directly if they wanted to buy a CD. If they saw a CD online that they liked and wanted to buy, and they went to my website, which is cellojones.com, they will see their possibilities where they could buy or order CDs.
Right. Okay. Terrific. So one final question. I understand that you're currently based in a lovely part of Spain that has some similarities to Kaslo, which we refer to, by the way, as Alpine Nirvana. Am I wrong, or am I right?
You're right. You're right. It's a part of Spain which is beautiful, not far from Gibraltar. They call it the Campo de Gibraltar, which is like the garden of Gibraltar. So many of the Brits moved out of the rock, which is very kind of constrictive and always has a cloud over it, which they say they towed out. The story is they towed it out from Southampton, with the rock. And so Spain can be beautifully sunny and Gibraltar can be cloudy. And this valley, this wonderful valley, is inhabited by many, well, it's an international community, but there are lots of Brits, there are lots of musicians, expats from Africa who've moved back to Europe, Germans, sun worshippers, all kinds of people. And you've got the Costa del Sol close by, which is like our equivalent of Los Angeles on the sea, on the Mediterranean. Then you have the Atlantic on the other side, where the surf is. And then
Sounds terrible.
It's an awful place, dreadful. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. And then you've got, on a clear day, you can see Africa, which is just across the straits, something similar to where I was recently in Victoria, and you see across the water, United States, the mountains. It's more or less the same kind of distance.
On a clear day, we can see Campbell Bay.
Yep, Campbell Bay. I think it's I mean, the mountains are not quite so dramatic, and they don't have snow in Africa, but it's that feeling, this is the Straits.
Well, it sounds like a place worthy of visiting, and now that we know you're there, we have another reason to go. So, with your indulgence, I'd like to take just a quick break to let you set up, and why don't we treat our listeners with a little impromptu solo, if you'd be a good sport and do that for us. Are you up for that?
That would be a pleasure, yeah.
Okay, great. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back with Michael, and he's playing us a little Bach. This is transformative and absolutely transporting. Listen to this.
That was British cellist Michael Kevin Jones playing Bach. And not simply playing Bach, folks. He was playing Bach sitting on an old church pew in what is probably Canada's smallest music store, Instruments of Change, owned by Jeremy Bain, right here in downtown Kaslo. A very cool experience. So if you enjoyed that snippet of music played on Michael's ancient cello using a $5,000 bow, then I have a little treat for you as we close today's episode of Radio Free Kaslo. Jeremy happened to have a Chinese-built cello in his shop that, shall we say, is slightly less expensive than Michael's ancient instrument. And I asked Michael if he would try and play it, which he gladly did. Jeremy handed him a bow that didn't cost $5,000. It cost $65. And Michael proceeded to take this cello through its paces. Now, I'm no cello expert, and I could certainly, having said that, hear the difference between Michael's instrument and Jeremy's, but it still sounds absolutely wonderful to these ears. See what you think. And as we go out listening to Bach, just remember how lucky we all are to live in Alpine Nirvana. And for those of you who are not living here, we wish you were here. Come and visit. You won't regret it. This is a wonderful place to be, especially now with spring bursting all around us. So this is Randy Moore signing off for another episode of Radio Free Kaslo. Happy trails until we meet again next Friday.